The World Cup kicks off this week across North America. Millions of football fans will travel to Canada, the US, and Mexico over the next 6 weeks to catch more than 100 games with billions more people watching on TV in the biggest sports tournament in the world. So, I know, why am I messing with this fun by talking about human rights? After all, shouldn't we keep politics out of sports? That's definitely the view of Gianni Infantino, president of FIFA, the International Football Association.
Same, because we are football people. We want to be football people. We don't want to be politicians or whatever else. The only thing I'm asking you, engage, help, don't divide, try to unite. The world is divided enough. We are organizing a World Cup. We're not organizing a war.
So that's what Infantino said at the kickoff to the last World Cup. In my defense, though, FIFA says it wants to keep politics out, but it's always been political, for example, when it decides which country to host the tournament. And FIFA's really leaned in this time with its move to gift US President Donald Trump its inaugural Peace Prize and join his so-called Board of Peace on Gaza. So we're going to talk about all of that because Trump's America, where 3/4 of the World Cup matches will be held, has a human rights problem.
The World Cup was awarded in 2018 under the first Trump administration, so FIFA assumed that they knew what all the risks were, and that was wrong.
That's Minky Worden. She's director of global initiatives at Human Rights Watch. A lot of her work looks at the intersection of sports and human rights. Now, FIFA couldn't have predicted that Donald Trump would be president in 2026. Maybe it thought a tournament in North America would mean relatively less controversy, but
they really didn't count on the Trump administration putting in place an aggressively militarized immigration policy that to implement mass deportations without due process and with a militarized force, ICE, and also, remember there are other agencies involved, CBP at the border. So when you have an event that in theory has millions of people crossing borders, there are actually risks to those who are coming from outside the United States and also those inside the United States, because immigrants are the ones who not only love the game, but they're also the ones who are going to deliver the game. So when we think about the tournament, the vast majority of the matches are in the United States. So that's 78 of 104. And you can think of that as being like 78 Super Bowls. It's quite unprecedented in world history. But we also have to think about who are the ones delivering that World Cup. It is the cleaning workers who will be taking care of hotels, the immigrants who will be selling concessions at stadiums, the security workers who are literally delivering this World Cup. And of course, look at any national World Cup team. Every national team is a celebration of the benefits of immigrants and what they bring to every country.
This tournament was supposed to be a game changer for human rights. FIFA was going to do better.
This is the first World Cup that was covered by a human rights framework. And the reason for that human rights framework is that the World Cups in Russia in 2018 and in Qatar in 2022 were, by any measure, human rights nightmares. In Russia, migrant workers from North Korea died preventable deaths building the St. Petersburg Stadium. There was North Korean slave labor. For the World Cup in Qatar in 2022, there were thousands of migrant workers who died preventable deaths, often from heat and lack of water, in Qatar building the $220 billion of World Cup infrastructure. And that's 8 stadiums in the desert, hundreds of thousands of hotel rooms, and also, of course, the infrastructure to move fans. So after these really human rights nightmares around the World Cups in 2018 and 2022, there was a push for FIFA to reform and actually to put in place a human rights framework. And what a human rights framework means is that there are protection for workers, journalists, fans, players, and others who are literally the ones delivering this World Cup.
A human rights framework sounds promising, but then there's always the issue of enforcement. And there, really, FIFA is answerable to no one. The other thing is, FIFA was pretty much dragged, kicking and screaming, to the human rights table.
So this was not voluntary. This was really done only after a thermonuclear event that brought down the entire governance of FIFA. So it stemmed directly from the massive corruption scandal that engulfed FIFA back in 2015 and 2016. So this is a 10-year trajectory. So in 2015 and 2016, the entire FIFA Council, that's the governing executive board, was arrested in sheets and handcuffs at the Bar-a-Lac Hotel in Zurich, Switzerland. The FIFA president and top leadership were arrested for corruption. And remember that corruption was around the World Cup for Qatar and also 2018 and 2022. But there was also, at the time, thousands of migrant workers were dying preventable heat-related deaths in Qatar under this modern-day slavery system called kafala. So all of these pressures together, and the human rights and civil society community we seized the moment to force FIFA to adopt the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. FIFA presents itself as a nonprofit, but is an $11 billion organization, and the World Cup in Qatar cost $220 billion. So we're talking about massive amounts of money, and therefore we're talking about massive potential for human rights catastrophes. So when Gianni Infantino took over in 2016, he was presented with this human rights report that said what his obligations were. He did not voluntarily agree to human rights. It was a report that was commissioned before he took over, and he really had to agree to it.
So FIFA doesn't really enjoy the responsibility of its human rights commitment, but heading into this tournament, there was still much to be excited about. There was potential. Minky says the idea was to make this an innovative and inclusive tournament.
This was really the first World Cup that had human rights as part of the bidding, mandatory part of the bidding, and a human rights strategy. It's called the United Bid Human Rights Strategy. It's a beautiful document that is entirely on paper. It's not being carried out. And then finally, remember that it was supposed to be the World Cup. It's the largest ever. It's 48 teams across Canada, the United States, and Mexico. So the new format with 48 teams was supposed to actually include more of the world, so that the World Cup would look like more of the world. So this World Cup was supposed to be innovative in many ways, including, first of all, the first governed by bidding requirements, the first with a human rights framework, the first across 3 countries. But with Donald Trump and the second Trump administration, we see that all of those things have been, all of the good things have been bulldozed out of the way. And the situation where teams have to travel across national borders from Canada to the US to Mexico actually then becomes a danger. So the things that were supposed to be inclusive and innovative about this World Cup have actually become part of the human rights risks that we see.
U.S. President Donald Trump's return really changed things. He's made clear with his tough immigration policy, some of it questionably illegal and being challenged in the courts, that his vision of the United States would not be inclusive, but exclusive. His administration has flexed its executive muscle so strongly that many Americans consider it autocratic. And when it comes to foreign policy, many governments around the world consider the U.S. a more erratic, dangerous player now, one that no longer supports the rules-based international order. That's the world FIFA found itself in, and FIFA responded by giving Trump a trophy, the so-called FIFA Peace Prize.
The FIFA Peace Prize shows that that FIFA as an organization, and certainly at the top, at the leadership level, is not prepared to uphold their responsibilities. The FIFA Peace Prize was awarded after Donald Trump had already violently targeted communities of color and detained people in their homes, in their vehicles, in courthouses, in schools. So first of all, the FIFA Peace Prize was awarded as a kind of fawning corruption exercise, but it was also awarded very cynically And Human Rights Watch wrote to FIFA in advance of the FIFA Peace Prize to ask who were the nominees, who were the judges, what was the process? And FIFA did not respond.
All this adds up to a World Cup in the United States that's much more of a flashpoint. While international fans worry, for example, whether they'd have any trouble at immigration when entering the country, Trump will see it as a moment to tout American greatness. You might even call it his attempt at sports washing.
So, sports washing is when governments, and often repressive governments, use major sporting events to mask human rights abuses at home and wars abroad. So, by that measure, evidently, this World Cup is a major sports washing World Cup. And the term is commonly associated with China, which hosted the Beijing Summer Olympics in 2008 and the Winter Olympics in 2022, with Russia, which hosted the Sochi Winter Olympics and the World Cup in 2018, with Saudi Arabia, which has basically bought golf and women's tennis and is hosting the World Cup in 2034. But I think it's really important that this label also be applied to the United States. The United States is hosting the vast majority of this World Cup and the semifinals and the finals. When the final whistle is blown, it will be Donald Trump who will hold up the World Cup trophy, not the players who have earned it. It is Donald Trump who will take the stage and refuse to leave, by the way, much as he did at the Club World Cup final. And I think it's, if we're reaching back in history, when I think of this World Cup, I actually think of Benito Mussolini, who hosted the second World Cup and used the propaganda of both hosting and winning. This was in 1934. And that bolstered his status as a winner at home and abroad. And I think we have to recognize that this FIFA World Cup in 2026, I believe in history, it will, at the time, the sports washing worked for Mussolini. But I really believe that in history, this World Cup will be seen in much the same light. And that is not a high watermark for sport. And in fact, one of the lowest moments for human rights in sport.
So what do you think? Do you think the comparison Minky made there is a fair comparison? Is there a problem holding the World Cup in the United States? Do you think the World Cup has a human rights obligation to its fans, players, and the tournament's workers? Let us know in the comments. That's all for now. DW News is giving you the latest on the World Cup across our social media channels. I'm Melissa Chan. Until next time.